What if the last piece of your freedom, the thing that let you buy groceries, see friends, go to church, vanished overnight? And what if it wasn't stolen by a stranger, but quietly taken by the people you trusted most? This is Dorothy's story. A mother who thought love meant sacrifice until she discovered that even the smallest act of control can suffocate a life. The morning began like any other. Dorothy Miller brewed her coffee, humming faintly as sunlight poured across her kitchen table. She reached for her keys, the ones she always kept in the blue ceramic bowl by the door. But the bowl was empty. Her brow furrowed. She checked the counter, the drawer, even the hook by the fridge. Nothing. Frowning, she opened the front door and froze. The driveway was empty. Her silver sedan, the car she had driven for 12 years, was gone. Panic surged through her chest. She hurried back inside, hands shaking as she reached for the phone. She called her son Mark, the words tumbling out. "Mark, my car, it's gone. Someone stole it." There was a pause on the other end. Then Mark's voice, calm and almost cheerful. "No one stole it, Mom. I sold it." Dorothy's breath caught. "You... what?" "I sold it," he repeated, as if he were explaining something simple. "It was time. That car wasn't safe anymore, and honestly, neither are you behind the wheel." Her heart thudded in her chest. "Mark, you can't just sell my car without asking me. It's mine." "Mom," he said, his tone softening into that practiced patience he used when speaking to a child. "You don't need it. You hardly drive anymore, and when you do, it worries me. I don't want you getting hurt. This way, we can make sure you're safe." Dorothy gripped the phone, her knuckles white. "Safe? You didn't even tell me. You didn't ask. That car was my freedom, Mark, my independence." "Mom," he sighed, "trust me." She wanted to scream, but the words lodged in her throat. When the call ended, she sank into her armchair, her hands trembling. She stared out at the empty driveway, the absence of the car like a hole in her life. Memories swirled. Trips to the farmer's market, Sunday mornings at church, afternoons visiting her friend Nancy across town. That car had carried her through storms, road trips, even the long drives to the hospital when her husband was sick. It wasn't just metal and wheels. It was her last piece of independence. And now, without warning, it was gone. She sat there for hours, the coffee growing cold beside her. Every so often she glanced at the driveway, half expecting the car to reappear, but it didn't. By evening, reality sank in. Her son hadn't stolen from her in the way thieves do. No, this was something worse. He had taken her freedom and called it love. Dorothy Miller pressed her hands to her face and whispered, "What have I done by trusting him?" The next morning, Dorothy reached for her purse and instinctively glanced at the empty driveway again. The sight still jolted her. The absence of her car wasn't just strange, it was wrong, like a missing limb. She had planned to drive to the grocery store, a simple trip, one she had done every Tuesday for years. Now, with no car, she picked up the phone and dialed Mark. "Mom, I'm swamped today," he said before she even finished asking. "But I'll swing by tomorrow after work. Just make a list and we'll grab everything then." "Tomorrow?" she repeated, glancing at her fridge. Milk nearly gone, bread down to the heel of the loaf, vegetables wilting in the drawer. "Mom," Mark said in that soothing, patronizing tone, "it's just one day. You'll survive." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She muttered a thank you and hung up. Dorothy spent the day eating cereal for lunch, and she realized how much she had relied on that car. The library, where she picked up new novels, gone. The church, where she lit candles and caught up with friends, out of reach. Even her neighbor Nancy's house, a quick 10-minute drive away, now felt like a distant country. Every errand, every outing required asking, waiting, depending, and Mark was always too busy. Sarah, too. "You're safer at home anyway," Sarah said breezily one afternoon when she dropped off groceries. "Just relax, Dorothy. Enjoy retirement." Relax. Retirement. As if she hadn't been living her life just fine before they intervened. Dorothy started walking more, to the corner store half a mile away, to the pharmacy a little further. The walks left her winded, but at least they gave her a sense of control. She told herself it was exercise. She told herself it was fine. But one rainy afternoon, when she trudged home with a bag of groceries cutting into her hands, she stopped in the middle of the sidewalk and let the rain soak her hair. It wasn't fine. Her independence had been stolen under the disguise of care. At home, she opened the fridge and set the groceries down with shaking hands. She sat heavily at the table, staring at the worn wood surface, tracing the grooves her husband had carved decades ago. "This isn't living," she whispered to the empty kitchen. That night, as she tried to sleep, she thought of her car. The way the steering wheel fit perfectly in her hands, the hum of the engine, the freedom of knowing she could leave whenever she wanted, go wherever she pleased. Now she was trapped in her own house, waiting on others' schedules, living like a guest in her own life. Dorothy pressed her palms together, whispering into the dark, "God, give me strength. I can't let them box me in like this." But even as she prayed, a sinking truth Dorothy heard the crunch of tires in her driveway. Peeking through the lace curtains, she saw Mark's truck pulling up. Relief sparked. Maybe he'd come to take her out somewhere, to bring back a piece of the life she'd lost. But when the door opened, it wasn't an invitation. "Hey, Mom," Mark said, striding in with Sarah close behind. "We just wanted to check in, see how you're doing without the car." Dorothy forced a smile. "I'm fine. I've been walking more, getting fresh air." Sarah laughed lightly, though her eyes didn't soften. "Walking? In this heat? Dorothy, that's not sustainable. You really need to accept that Mark and I are handling things for you now." The word stung, handling things for you, as if she were a burden, a child. Later, as they settled in the living room, Dorothy excused herself to make tea. From the kitchen, she could hear their voices drifting down the hall. "She's so stubborn," Sarah muttered, always insisting she can do everything herself. "Yeah," Mark replied with a sigh. "She doesn't realize we're saving her from herself. I mean, selling the car was the best thing I ever did. At least now she can't just wander off." Wander off. The phrase hit her like a slap. She gripped the counter, her hands trembling, her throat tight with humiliation. Was that what they thought of her? That she was some confused old woman, liable to lose herself on the road? She carried the tea back in, her face calm, her smile polite, as if she hadn't heard. They chatted about small things, the weather, a new restaurant, while she sat quietly, the bitterness of their words steeping stronger than the tea in her cup. That night when they left, Dorothy went to her room and shut the door. She sank onto the bed, pressing her hands to her face, her own son, mocking her behind her back. The boy she had raised, through scraped knees and broken hearts, the man she had sacrificed for, worked extra shifts for, and now she was nothing more than stubborn, a problem to be managed. Her chest ached with a pain deeper than anger. It was shame, humiliation, but beneath the shame, something else flickered, defiance. The next morning, Dorothy laced up her sneakers and stepped outside. The sun was already hot, the pavement shimmering, but she didn't care. She walked, past the church, past the park, past the rows of tidy houses. Her legs burned, sweat trickled down her back, but each step felt like a declaration. I am not helpless. I am not invisible. I am not done yet. By the time she reached home, she was exhausted, her knees throbbing, but her spirit was sharper. She wasn't going to sit quietly and fade into the wallpaper of her own life. Not yet. That night, she opened her journal, one she hadn't touched in months. She wrote slowly, deliberately. They think I am stubborn. They think I will give in. But I will not. Every step I take is mine, whether they approve or not. They cannot box me in without a fight. As she closed the journal, a small smile tugged at her lips. Let them think she was stubborn. Let them laugh. Stubbornness, she realized, might just be her greatest weapon. It happened on a Wednesday afternoon. Dorothy had decided to walk to the pharmacy, nearly 2 miles from her house. The air was sticky with summer heat, the sun pressing down hard. She carried a small canvas bag, determined to fill it with her prescriptions and a few household items. Halfway there, her foot caught on a crack in the sidewalk. She stumbled, tried to catch herself, but her knee buckled. She fell hard, scraping both palms and her knees against the rough concrete. The pain shot through her legs. She sat there, stunned, heart racing. A jogger stopped, helped her up, and offered to call someone. I'm fine, Dorothy insisted, though her voice shook. When Mark arrived later that evening, having heard from the jogger who recognized her as the older woman from Maple Street, he stormed through the door. Mom, what were you thinking? He snapped, eyes blazing. Walking that far, in this heat, you could have broken your hip. Dorothy sat at the table, dabbing antiseptic on her knees. I was going to the pharmacy. I needed my medication. You could have asked me, he said sharply. I did, she whispered. Last week. You said you were too busy. He flinched but recovered quickly, his tone turning cold. This proves my point. You can't keep pretending you're capable of everything. First the car, now this. You're reckless, Mom. Sarah chimed in from behind him, arms crossed. Honestly, Dorothy, you're making it harder on all of us. Why can't you just accept help? Stop acting like a teenager sneaking out. Dorothy stared at them, the words slicing deep. Reckless. Harder on all of us. Acting like a teenager. Not one word of concern for her scraped knees, her shaken spirit. No comfort, no compassion. Only control. Her chest tightened with something fierce. I am not a child, she said firmly, and I am not your burden. Mark's eyes narrowed. You're acting irrational. We're trying to protect you. Protect. The word had become a cage, bars made of false kindness. Dorothy stood, her knees throbbing but her spine straight. No, Mark, you're trying to control me. There's a difference. Silence filled the kitchen, heavy and sharp. For the first time she saw it clearly. Their concern wasn't about her safety. It was about convenience, about making her smaller, quieter, easier to manage. That night, after they left in a storm of mutters and shaking heads, Dorothy sat at her desk and opened her journal. But I refuse to vanish into their idea of safety. This is my life, my choice, my fight. She pressed the pen hard against the page, the letters dark and firm. Then she leaned back, staring at the ceiling. Her knees burned, her heart ached, but her resolve solidified. This was the breaking point. If they thought she would fold after this, they were wrong. Dorothy Miller was not done fighting. The morning after her fall, Dorothy rose slowly, her knees stiff and sore. She shuffled to the kitchen, brewed her coffee, and opened her journal. The page from last night stared back at her. This is my life, my choice, my fight. She read it twice, letting the words sink in. For weeks she had been reacting to the loss of her car, to her son's dismissive words, to Sarah's cutting remarks. But now she realized something. Reacting wasn't enough. She needed to act. Quietly, patiently, deliberately. That afternoon, she walked next door to see her neighbor, Ruth. A widow in her 60s with sharp eyes and a kind heart, Ruth had often brought soup when Dorothy's husband was sick years ago. They sat on Ruth's porch with glasses of lemonade, cicadas buzzing in the distance. Dorothy told her everything. The car, the restrictions, the fall. Ruth shook her head. That's not love, Dorothy. That's control. And control has a way of suffocating people. You need to start taking pieces of your life back. Dorothy leaned forward. But how? They watch everything. They think I can't handle anything myself. Ruth smiled faintly. Then don't tell them what you're handling. Start small. Build your freedom in the shadows. They'll never see it coming. The advice settled deep inside her. So Dorothy began her
She asked Ruth for rides to the store once a week. They made an adventure of it, laughing in the aisles, buying little treats alongside the essentials. Mark didn't have to know. Dorothy also began stashing away money. Every month, when her pension came in, she withdrew a little cash and tucked it into an envelope hidden inside her sewing box. At first, it was just small bills, 20s, 50s, but soon the envelope thickened, the weight of it both frightening and exhilarating. She was building something, a secret life of her own. At night, she studied the classifieds, circling ads for used cars. She knew she couldn't buy one yet, not until she had enough saved, but the act itself filled her with purpose. Each circle was a promise. Someday, she'd be back on the road. She also began to practice. Every morning, she sat at her desk and balanced her checkbook, even though Mark insisted on doing it for her. She tracked every penny of her spending, writing it neatly in her journal. She read articles on budgeting, watched online videos about senior independence, even tested herself with puzzles to keep her mind sharp. If they wanted to claim she was forgetful or incompetent, she would be ready. One evening, Sarah dropped by unexpectedly. She noticed the fresh groceries in the fridge, the hymnal on the table from Sunday service. "Did Mark take you out?" she asked casually, her eyes narrowing. Dorothy smiled, folding her hands. "No, Sarah, I managed." The younger woman frowned, clearly unsettled by the calm confidence in her voice. When she left, Dorothy returned to her journal and wrote, "Every small act is a rebellion. Every dollar saved, every mile walked, every secret ride. They think I am trapped, but slowly, quietly, I am unlocking the cage." Her knees still ached, but her spirit was stronger than it had been in months, and though she said nothing to Mark or Sarah, inside, she carried a secret truth that warmed her like a hidden fire. Dorothy Miller was not done. She was just getting started. The envelope in Dorothy's sewing box had grown thick, its edges worn from her careful handling. Every time she slipped another bill inside, she whispered to herself, "Almost there." By late autumn, the savings were enough. Not a fortune, but enough for a used car, something modest, reliable, hers. She told no one. On a crisp Saturday morning, Ruth drove her to a small lot on the edge of town. Rows of cars gleamed in the sunlight, some dented, some polished to a shine. The air smelled of rubber and oil, and Dorothy's pulse quickened with a mix of fear and excitement. A salesman approached, his smile wide. "Looking for anything particular today?" Dorothy straightened her shoulders. "Something dependable. Nothing fancy, just something that runs." They walked the rows until she saw it, a dusty blue sedan, not unlike the one she had lost. Her heart tugged at the sight. The salesman started listing details, mileage, maintenance records, but Dorothy barely heard him. She ran her hand along the cool metal, her palm tingling. "This one," she said softly. "I'll take this one." Inside the cramped office, she signed the papers carefully this time, reading every line. Her hand shook only once, when she wrote her name, bold and clear, on the ownership form. Dorothy Miller, sole owner. When the keys landed in her palm, she closed her fists tightly around them. The weight of metal had never felt so powerful. Ruth grinned. "Ready for a test drive?" Dorothy slid behind the wheel, her breath catching as she adjusted the seat. The steering wheel felt familiar, comforting. She turned the key and the engine hummed to life. Her eyes prickled with tears. She pressed her foot to the pedal, and the car rolled forward, smooth and steady. Out onto the road, past fields of gold and barns weathered by time, wind rushing through the cracked window. She laughed, a sound she hadn't heard from herself in months. It wasn't just a drive, it was freedom. When they returned, Dorothy parked the car in Ruth's garage. It couldn't stay at her house, not yet. Mark would see it, and the battle would begin before she was ready. Instead, she visited it like a secret. Once or twice a week, Ruth would pick her up, and Dorothy would slip behind the wheel, driving around town, rebuilding her confidence. She practiced merging onto the highway, parking between tight lines, even navigating the crowded streets near the mall. Every drive was a declaration. I am capable. I am not done. One afternoon, she stopped at the DMV. The clerk, a young man with tired eyes, handed her a vision test. Dorothy read every line with ease. She passed the written questions, renewed her license, and walked out with a plastic card that felt like armor. That night, she sat at her desk, journal open. Today, I became myself again. I held the wheel. I passed the test. My name is still mine. My life still mine. They tried to ground me, but I am back on the road, and I will never surrender that road again. She tucked the license carefully into her wallet, her hand steady. For the first time in months, Dorothy didn't feel like she was waiting for permission. She wasn't reacting, hiding, shrinking. She was ready. And though Mark and Sarah didn't know it yet, the next chapter would no longer belong to them. It belonged to her. It was bound to happen sooner or later. One chilly afternoon, Dorothy pulled into her own driveway. She had decided it was time to stop hiding. The blue sedan gleamed in the pale winter sun, parked proudly where her silver car had once been. She carried her groceries inside, humming softly, feeling lighter than she had in months. But an hour later, tires crunched on the gravel. Mark's truck. The front door opened and he stormed in without knocking. "Mom, what the hell is that in the driveway?" Dorothy set her grocery bag on the counter, her heart steady. "That. Where did you even get the money? Who sold it to you?" She folded her arms. "That's none of your concern. It's mine. Paid for with my money. Registered in my name." Mark's face darkened. "Mom, you can't do this. It's dangerous. You could hurt yourself or someone else." Her voice rose, sharp and clear. "Dangerous? Mark, I passed every test at the DMV. My license is valid. I'm not senile. I am perfectly capable of driving myself to the store, the doctor, church. What's dangerous is letting you make me a prisoner in my own house." He blinked, taken aback by the force in her tone. "Mom, no." She held up a hand. "Enough. I let you take too much already. You sold my car without asking. You decided my life for me. And I went along because I trusted you. But trust is not the same as control. You crossed that line." Sarah appeared in the doorway, arms crossed, her lips pursed. "Dorothy, don't you think you're being a little dramatic? Mark was just trying to—" Dorothy cut her off. "Save me? Protect me? No. He was trying to control me.
and you went right along with it. Well, I'm done. This is my life, my house, my car. If you can't respect that, then don't come here telling me how to live." Mark's jaw clenched. "You don't understand. We were trying to help." "Help doesn't take away choices," Dorothy shot back. "Help doesn't strip someone of freedom. Help asks. It doesn't steal." The silence stretched, heavy, charged. For the first time in months, Dorothy wasn't trembling. Her knees ached, but her spine felt like iron. Mark finally spoke, his voice low. "So what now? You're just going to pretend like you don't need us?" Dorothy met his gaze evenly. "I will always need love, Mark, but I don't need control, and I will never let you confuse the two again." Sarah scoffed. "Fine, do what you want. It'll be because I lived my life on my terms, and I'll accept that. Gladly." They left soon after, the door slamming behind them. Dorothy exhaled slowly, her body shaking with adrenaline. She sat at the table, staring at the blue sedan through the window. For a moment, fear flickered. Had she gone too far? Would Mark cut her off completely? But then another thought rose stronger. Maybe that was okay. She opened her journal and wrote, "Today I stood my ground. They tried to shame me, frighten me, bend me back into silence. But I spoke. My voice was steady, my hands firm. I told them the truth. I am not their prisoner. I am free. And for once, they heard me." As she closed the journal, a strange lightness filled her chest. Not joy, exactly. Not yet. But strength. Strength she had almost forgotten she still carried. The next morning, Dorothy stood by the window, watching the pale light spread across her driveway. The blue sedan glistened faintly with dew. Her car, her choice. She smiled, her chest rising with quiet pride. There was no knock at the door, no voice telling her she was reckless or stubborn, just silence. And for the first time, it felt like freedom. After breakfast, she slipped on her coat, picked up her keys, and walked outside. The air was crisp, cool, carrying the faint scent of wood smoke. Sliding into the driver's seat, she took a deep breath and turned the ignition. The hum of the engine vibrated through her bones like music. She pulled out onto the open road, the morning sun spilling over the hills. Her first stop was the church. The familiar white steeple rose above the trees, sunlight glinting off its cross. When she walked in, heads turned. She drove to Nancy's house, her oldest friend. They sat on the porch, reminiscing, their laughter tumbling freely into the autumn air. Nancy squeezed her hand. "It's good to see you out and about again, Dot. You look alive." Dorothy's throat tightened, but she smiled. "I feel alive." As the weeks passed, her world expanded again. She drove to the farmer's market on Saturdays, filling her trunk with fresh produce and flowers. She visited the library, running her fingers over the spines of books she hadn't touched in months. She even took a short road trip to the coast, the salty wind whipping through her hair as waves crashed against the shore. Each mile she drove was a declaration. I am still here. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the sky in strokes of orange and pink, Dorothy sat at her desk, journal open. She wrote carefully, the words flowing steady and sure. They tried to ground me like a child. They sold my freedom and told me it was for love. But love doesn't steal. Love doesn't chain. I took back the wheel, and in doing so, I took back myself. I don't know how many roads lie ahead, but every one of them will be mine to choose. My mistakes, my victories, my life. She set the pen down and closed the journal, her hand steady. Later, that night, as she prepared for bed, the phone rang. Mark's name lit the screen. Dorothy stared at it for a long moment. She didn't pick up. Not out of spite, not out of anger, but because she no longer needed his permission to exist. She turned off the light, slipped beneath the quilt, and listened to the silence of her home. A silence that no longer felt like absence, but peace. In the morning, she would get into her car again. Maybe she'd drive to the next town over for pie. Maybe she'd take the long road just to feel the wind on. #Meta. Dorothy Miller smiled in the dark. The road ahead was hers, and for the first time in a long, long while, she was free.